Hey, welcome to my channel, or welcome back, loyal viewers. I'm Carrie, the Nosy Housefrau, and today is a bit of a departure for me. I'm sticking my nose in on the topic of Carole Baskin and primarily the mysterious disappearance of her husband, Don Lewis, in 1997. If you're not familiar, and I don't see how you could not be since it's required quarantine viewing, Carole Baskin gained overnight fame in Netflix's Tiger King, a documentary about a strange guy named Joseph Allen Maldonado Passage, born Joseph Allen Schreibvogel, best known by his stage name, Joe Exotic. After Tiger King aired, Carole Baskin and her husband Howard Baskin, who by the way is a Harvard business graduate and has studied law in the past and helped Carole rebrand in 2003, were upset and vocal about, among other things, how their sanctuary was portrayed in Tiger King. After doing a bit of research, I have to say this seems like a valid complaint. Netflix not only showed old footage of Carole's sanctuary, they showed things like a crowded group walking through, when in fact that was only one day a year that many people descended on Big Cat Rescue for a special event. They showed Carole next to a lion in a small cage. To this day, she gets angry letters and calls over this, but in fact, that was a feeding cage and only a temporary spot for feeding the lion. In fact, those cages are really long now and lead out to huge habitats that are clean, have clean water, and do not group together animals who could hurt each other. While Joe Exotic's cats are all scarred and scratched up, Carole's look beautiful, healthy, and happy. She doesn't deserve to be lumped in with Joe and his awful approach to owning big cats. In fact, Carole didn't want any footage of her petting a cat in Tiger King, but they found and used some footage of that anyway. She was concerned because she doesn't want people thinking it's a good idea, and this really is considering the best interest of the animals. I do believe Carole is interested in saving them. She makes no bones about the fact that big cats who come there will spend their lives there because they cannot be re-released into the wild. She does not breed or buy cats any longer. There was a time in the 90s where she did, but she has been transparent about that, and through whatever transformation and whenever, she now has a legitimate sanctuary that really does some good, and in my opinion, was not properly represented in Tiger King. I will link the website below where you can see Carole has a methodical list of the big cats on her property. Their breeds, their names, and their huge enclosures are all available for you to peruse. You can even see one tiger named Keisha had come to Big Cat Rescue having had a hard life. In another facility, she shared a wall with animals who were able to reach in and harm her. She had lost part of her ear, her tail, etc. She spent the last part of her life at Big Cat Rescue, and where you can see she got vet care when she was ill and was only let go peacefully when it was determined she had advanced kidney disease. I see full transparency with that organization, and they have in fact been given awards by watchdog people who would be noticing if anything were going on that was not good for the animals. And yet, like I said, I would be remiss if I didn't mention it wasn't always that way. Carole admits in the 90s she did all of the things she fights against now. She bred cats, she declawed, bought and sold cats. I will link a source below that claims in The Truth About Carole Baskin that she continued to declaw cats until 2005 and had people pay to stay in cabins where they could sleep with cubs. This has not been proven. For the most part, I found sources that support Carole's sanctuary. Here is what one former volunteer had to say about working at Big Cat Rescue. They explained that, similarly to Joe's zoo, the animals were indeed all caged, but along with the aforementioned fact that they had vacation periods, their space is still significantly larger. Big Cat Rescue's typical cage size was 1,200 square feet. A few were larger, but none were smaller. Cages held either 1 or 2 cats. From memory, I would guess it was about a 70-30 split for cages with 1 cat and cages with 2 cats. Cages look a lot smaller due to their design. Most of the cages on tour paths have a front section easily visible from the tour path and a back section that recedes further away. This gives the cats the option to get away from people on the tour if they want. Did Carole ever breed cats? According to the author, Carole and Big Cat Rescue did indeed breed cats at one point, writing, yeah, they totally fucking did. They bred cats until 1997. The most recent cat born in the sanctuary was an accident in 2001. They bought up cats until 1998. They let the public touch the cats until 2003 and let the volunteers touch the cats until 2004. Somewhere between 10 and 15% of the cats living there today were born there. But here's the thing, they actually own up to all of this. This is a link to BCR's website where they talk about how they've changed over time. You don't have to believe that their intentions were always as pure and good-hearted as they make it sound, but I have respect for them owning their mistakes publicly and genuinely changing. All in all, they round the post off with a TLDR saying Big Cat Rescue is not the lawful evil equivalent of Joe's Chaotic Evil Zoo. It's a non-profit sanctuary accredited by multiple organizations whose job it is to keep track of these things, and it genuinely does right by its animals. Fair play, it seems the organization is indeed lawful and does right by the animals that are enclosed within. So there you have it. It's a shame that the cats at her sanctuary could suffer from the misrepresentation in Tiger King, and that includes future rescues, because smaller cats can be re-released. For example, they had at least one bobcat healed and re-released. This is nothing like Joe Exotic, and her rescue doesn't deserve to be mentioned in the same breath. Whatever else Carole Baskin may be, she is not an animal abuser. And that brings us to Don Lewis, Carole's second husband, who mysteriously disappeared. While Don was still married, Carole started up an affair with him when she was just 19 and still married herself to a man named Mike Murdoch, she claims was controlling and abusive. Don saw her walking one night and offered her a ride. She refused, but he was insistent and even said she could put a gun against him that he had on the seat. So she did, and the rest is history. She claims at one point he went back to his wife for a bit, and according to Carole, that is when she should have left. Really? Not when you found out he was married? Anyway, moving right along. After Netflix aired Tiger King, the biggest accusation against Carole was that she was involved with Don's disappearance. One night in 1997, he was simply never seen again. Netflix addressed this in episode 3, The Secret. You can decide for yourself what their responsibility was there, but I would put to you that they are not 2020, and the accusations were mostly relevant because they came from Joe himself, who was a very vocal supporter of the rumors, and even wrote a song about it. They had a lot of clips of Don's family talking about how Carole liquidated Don right after he was gone, how she apparently had a note up that said to never speak his name again. Carole denies this about the note, but she wasn't asked about it in the documentary. It did seem one-sided. After Don's ex-wife Gladys said that she was afraid of Carole, Netflix does this slow-motion zoom of Carole standing still, and I'm thinking the only way they got that was to have her pose, meaning she stood there thinking they were filming her to put her in a good light. That's showbiz, folks, but I think we can fill in some blanks better without the sensationalism. The show seemed to condemn Carole for going to her husband's locked-up office and taking his forms. The secretary and right-hand woman to Don Lewis seemed to have an odd role. Her name was Anne, and it was said that Don trusted her with every penny of his money. And I have to wonder, if Carole was as quintessential in making them rich as she claims, why weren't all of the books being handled by her? It seems unlikely that a person would amass a lot of wealth and have no hand on the purse strings. In her latest video, posted in the last 48 hours at the time of this upload, Carole shows receipts. To prove she was no gold digger, she released a document showing that Don had only $113,000 the year she met him. Well, that's on paper, and Don was known for hiding money. It doesn't include other assets, and still, 6 figures is nothing to sneeze at, especially in the early 90s. And it's a heck of a lot more than Carole brought into the relationship by all accounts. So maybe she wasn't a gold digger so much as a silver digger, but I do not believe Carole when she says she made all of the money. Don clearly had the stepping stones for them to both begin to buy cats at auction, which is what they did before investing in defaulting real estate. But anyone who knew Don could tell you he always had a Midas touch, and that he was doing very well even before he met Carole, and I think that's probably true. Carole's overall response to the buzz around Tiger King has been odd. First, her current husband Howard uploaded a 9-minute video that explained how if you just spent 1 hour with Carole, you'd know she could never have anything to do with Don's disappearance because she's not capable of it. Well, that's a terrible argument. First of all, there's no one you could spend 1 hour, 1 week, or 1 decade with and say they are not capable of something because they seem so sweet. That assertion will not sway the general public because, innocent or not, people tend to believe a true sociopath could fool anyone. If anything, you're fanning the flames of suspicion when you say you'd know she could never do it. Then, Carole herself put out a short video saying she was going to address the questions regarding Netflix. If you click on a link, I did. It started with the day she was born. Her husband said you could know she was innocent in an hour, but apparently she wanted to show you every hour of her life. She put out a series of 2-minute or so short videos, sometimes less than 2 minutes, about her entire life. June 6, 1961, I was born. That's nice, Carole, but that's not the question first and foremost on people's minds. June 6, 1964, I'm the birthday girl. Happy birthday! What happened to your husband? In a huge coincidence, June 6, 1964 is the exact day my husband was born. Carole and I have a lot in common, except my husband isn't missing, and if he was, I'd be asking where he was and would never be able to laugh at anything regarding it ever. That was something that bothered me about Carole talking about her husband in Netflix. We never see her ask where he is, or even speculate. Certainly, she didn't seem worried. Now, I didn't take that as a sign of absolute guilt because I knew Netflix was editing in a way to get views and create drama, but doing a deep dive on my own and finding out Carole's idea of addressing the questions are a zillion 2-minute videos on getting to know her, I raised a brow. At that point, it went up to 1980 before the next videos were privated. I thought that was all we were going to get, but on May 26th, Carole uploaded a very detailed 2-hour and 37-minute video addressing the Tiger King documentary point by point with timestamps. That's more like it, Carole. I watched it. I watched the entire thing, and some parts twice. Carole has a very soothing voice, but damn it, it literally put me to sleep, and I had to resume watching when I woke up. But like so many, I was waiting to hear about that night. The night in question when Carole's husband disappeared. The world wants the Don details. I'll leave it up to you to decide what Netflix's responsibility is there, but I don't know that it was Netflix's job to make sure they did an exonerating deep dive for Carole. The documentary, after all, was about Joe Exotic, and as train wrecks go, a closed case with no evidence or body is an on-the-rails trolley compared to the carnage of the train wreck that is Joe. Carole's missing husband was more of a segue to Joe's hatred of her and his constant claims that she fed her husband to tigers. Netflix had created a circus and they were determined to fill it with clowns. In the documentary, we see Carole as being almost glib about her missing husband. She's complained that people have had a problem with her laugh. But I can see why. It's not her laugh, it's the nervous, inappropriate nature of it. In psychology, it's actually called an inappropriate response. Laughing, while saying you couldn't even get his hand through a grinder, seemed odd. True, while watching it's a shock to us as we've only just found out, but it happened in 1997, and Carole has cameras on her. She could be nervous because of that too. She's weird, but weird doesn't equal guilty. Still, I can't imagine ever feeling that at peace with a tragic mystery like that. Carole acts like no one should even entertain the notion that she could be guilty of her husband disappearing when she has a backyard full of husband disappearing machines. One thing is crystal clear in Carole's new video, Carole Baskin on Tiger King, links below. Over the course of the 2 hours and 37 minutes, she makes it so understood, intended or not, that she did not like Don. She peppers it in with things like how she made sure Don didn't disown his children and how she made the money for the family. She put up with so much, but in the course of that video, here are some of the things that Carole says about her missing husband. Don had increasingly strange behavior. Don was not easy to live with. He was going to meet with an Alzheimer's doctor. Don was not good at real estate because he was always looking for a quick buck. Don wanted to disown his children. Gladys accused Don of raping her 15-year-old niece. Don was bipolar. Don did not handle cats properly. Don was illiterate. Don piled up junk around the sanctuary. Don forged my name on documents. Why wasn't that pursued? Don locked me out of our room and I had to sleep in my office. Don would get lost and get stuck in dumpsters, then have to call. Don stopped using bathrooms and would shit himself outside. No, those things are of course taken out of context, but if you hear them in context in Carole's video, the picture is still clear. Carole Baskin has nothing good to say about Don Lewis. She couldn't even resist throwing in a negative in her missing poster, saying he's not very good at reading or writing, as if that would be an identifying factor for someone. Look at that guy staring at that newspaper too long. He's not good at the reading or the writing. Must be Don Lewis. That's right, according to Carole, who still keeps those missing posters up, you want to keep your eye open for an elderly curmudgeon with dementia who looks like he might be a rapist, not good at reading or writing, and is probably shitting himself in or outside of a dumpster, and can pilot a plane. As illiterate as Carole says that Don is, he was able to pluck his way through a restraining order that he filed in June, and in his own words, write why he felt it was necessary. This is the second time Carole has gotten angry enough to threaten to kill me. I was away from our house, 40 acres. She gave 2 junkmen permission to come on our property and remove trucks and equipment that I had stored there that a man owed me $17,000 on. When I found out, the man that owned the equipment had to call the sheriff to make them stop. When I got back, me and Carole got in a big fuss. She ordered me out of the house or she would kill me. If I came back, she would kill me. She has a .45 revolver. She took my .357 and hid it. I have owned the home and land 17 years. We have only lived there 3 years. I have a lot of equipment and animals and cats there. I have 132 exotic cats. So Don told the courts, friends, and family that he felt in danger of Carole. That was in June. In August, he disappeared. On the night he disappeared, Carole says she was going to Albertsons around 11. The cops claim it was more like 3 a.m. She thinks she was going for Pedialyte, although she can't be 100% sure in her memory, but she recalls the kittens were on 4-hour feedings and she wanted to supplement because they weren't doing very well. And apparently she wasn't very well stocked. And she says she forgot that Albertsons wasn't open 24 hours. Could happen, I suppose, but remember, this is a very methodical woman who knows how things run. If you listen to her talk, you won't be surprised she can run a cat sanctuary the way she does, and it's easy to believe that she was the family secretary at least at one point because she definitely seems to understand bureaucracy. That coupled with a husband who has a background in law, and you can see why they did well in court. That's why I'm so surprised she would be ill-prepared for the kitten feedings. But let's say that happened. She then says her van overheated and she had to walk 2 hours home. During that time, in her explanation of running into the police, one of whom was her brother, she asks, if I was up to anything, why wouldn't I just sneak into the darkness and sneak around them? And it bothers me how the obvious answer there is ignored, because of course a guilty person might want their whereabouts noticed as an alibi. Maybe her car did overheat after she met someone for payment for all we know. Apparently it was hours later that she says she saw him last. This is what the lead homicide detective said, that she claims hours later was the last time she saw him, which I find weird because she says the last thing he said to her was that he had to get up early, and if she saw him hours after 3 a.m., it was already past early. So the timeline is off to me. Carole definitely had been cooperative and offered any and all inspection of her home. There is no way she fed that guy to cats. She's too smart for that. I don't know if Carole is involved, but I believe her husband was a victim of foul play, absolutely, and taken far away to be disposed of in a murder for hire. I say that in part because his van, found parked at the airport, had a broken window and a crushed grill. It's not a stretch for the imagination to think someone ran him off the road, broke in, and after putting his body in another vehicle, alive or not, they drove the van to the airport to make it look like he left, hence the seat not being in his driving position. No plane that anyone knew of took off that night, and according to multiple accounts, had he headed to Costa Rica, he would have needed to refuel 4 times. Don Lewis often flew commercial, and he was planning on flying commercial out of Miami the next day because he had a bunch of cars shipping from Miami to Costa Rica. I don't know what happened to those cars. I wasn't able to find out, but I think that they might be a clue to the puzzle because certainly he wouldn't leave that behind. Here are some things that bother me about Carole's idea of what must have happened. Carole claims she believes Don chose to disappear and crashed his plane over the Gulf on his way to Costa Rica. Now remember, she has described him as though he's a late-stage dementia patient. She says he can't remember 5 minutes ago and doesn't know where to defecate, but she thinks he piloted a plane for a journey where he would have to stop 4 times to fuel up. That is what she thinks happened. Yet, she acknowledges that Don's van left at the airport had the seat moved back. Also, would someone trying to disappear leave an obvious "I am disappearing forever" clue like that? That's more what someone would do if they were trying to make it look like someone was trying to disappear. Carole says she offered to pay the police to go to Costa Rica to investigate rumors that he had been seen. Putting aside that most of us would get on a plane ourselves had there been sightings, if she were guilty, what would she have to lose by sending them on a goose chase that makes her look innocent for insisting? She also says she wound up hiring her own detective who uncovered nothing. I do wonder what the source of those said rumors were. She claims she had the missing posters even in Costa Rica and still has them in her car. It would become legal to claim Don Lewis dead 5 years later. Carole did just that, 5 years and 1 day later to be exact. She claims it was his family who couldn't wait to get their hands on the insurance money. Everything that happens in Carole's life is because of other people's greed. She says Don's kids, who she refused to cut out, blew through $1.3 million of Don's property, etc. that they had given him, and then they wanted more. Carole has never been able to be pressured to do anything, and yet she claims it was for them that she declared him dead so quickly. To Don's family, Carole is the woman who took Don away and broke up their family. Now, they claim they got less than 10% of his estate. They believe that Carole was the one who had the most to gain by Don's death. She certainly had a lot to lose by a divorce, and it seems, by all accounts, he was seeking one. I certainly don't think that restraining order was a sign that things in the future would be good. Everything seemed to be in Don's name, and he had the property a long time before Carole. According to Carole's diaries, his infidelity was heartbreaking for her and she felt very trapped and wished she could find a way out. Don filed a restraining order in June and disappeared in August.